citizens of Goodyear, city council, city manager, municipal judge, and the city attorney that are the 3 positions appointed by the city council. And then the deputy city managers and the rest of the departments are under the city manager. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions when they come back.
Very good. Thank you, John. So let's take a 5-minute break, folks. The process, the intention is what I will share with you. Whatever you want, let's talk about it, and let's make sure we get it done in a way that's useful to you. This is a long presentation. There was a lot of talking at you because of the process that we had to go through tonight, especially with the framing of the budget and how the budget's done by John. Raised a lot of questions. We will take note of those questions, get something back to you within this week electronically, let you know that it's posted on the website. So we'll get this, keep turning it over. If you don't get the response and the degree of detail that you need, just let me know. We will take care of that. So let me share with you a approach and see what you think. In order to accomplish what the council has directed as your destination, we would like to share information with you, not consuming as much time. My suggestion is if you go with the approach in any fashion that I'm going to present here, that our meetings be about 1/2 presentation and the other half is conversation. It's playing out, it's going into questions, it's going a little deeper, it's the things that you might want to do that aren't simply listening to presentations. And that the information would be shared to support the committee by department. I wouldn't tell you which specific departments would be at the next meeting, but we would start to process a presentation that's straight to the point, that gives you information but doesn't lobby for any kind of position. So that's one way to do it. It would take us through about 6 meetings. Those meetings could be 2 hours. We've just consumed 2 hours. Or they could be 3 hours. I'd suggest it's not prudent to go any longer than that because we just it's the end of the day and it's just not going to be useful. The committee questions and requests, again, throughout the process, anywhere that you want more information, just say so. Sometimes I might refer you back to information you already have and tell you where to find that within that information so we don't duplicate information. Most of it will be done electronically, not by hard copy. Committee discussions and note-taking. I suggested at the beginning of the meeting that I do a very brief 5-minute recap of some of the key points that you then can have discussions, whether at your table or generally open discussions about items that you'd like to pursue in more depth, but you don't want to pursue them with a presentation, you want to pursue them with conversation. So your opportunity, I think, is enhanced if you take notes. I mentioned that it would be 6 weekly meetings to get through this, and the way it would flow conceivably would be about 5 of those meetings would be presentation, feedback, the kind of Q&A we did today, and your deliberation and consideration as a group, where you start to share different viewpoints that might influence people's final perspective. Then we would have a time when you individually would do your ratings and your suggestions and your recommendations for enhancements and your recommendations for cuts, your view of how to close those gaps and create a stronger, better system. You would give those to me. Some would be narrative, some would be analytical, or on a scale of 10. We'll try to create something, show it to you, and see if it fits your needs. My job is to put all that together, to find the weights, to find the commonalities, to create a perspective, feed it back to you as a report to see if it's consistent with what you've said. If it is, then that's your report. We'll make the adjustments you want to make to it, and that's the report that you would then send forward in some fashion based on the council's interest to the council. So that might be in the 7th week. So it could conceivably go to the middle of March. If we follow this process and are thorough but not over thorough, and you have the chance to deliberate and then make your observations, that's about what the timeline would be. Personal recommendations, report to City Council will reflect everybody's recommendation. Nothing will get lost but we won't give all the information. We'll put it together in a proper and well-structured report, which I've done many of over many years, for your approval subsequently, and then presentation. So that's a rough framework. How do you feel about it? How do you want to go forward? Are you okay with not meeting next week because the room's taken up and there's a ton of stuff that, both for staff and for you to go over to make sure you're prepared to get into this in some depth? How do you feel about it? Open question.
I have a question and a thought, because as I was, chosen on the committee and realizing what was all involved and the things that we would be looking at and so forth, it looked like an overwhelming project. And I was wondering if we would be even on our best interest either to choose a chairman. These are my thoughts and ideas for us. And then maybe divide up into groups, and one take the police department, one take the fire department, and one take the city of Goodyear, and go through and analyze each department and then come together with reports to the committee. How deep do you want us to do? Do you want us just to look at the obvious and the easiest things, or do you really want an honest, deep, thorough review of where we can look at and find things that can be cut, differences that can be made, and hopefully roll back our tax and make Goodyear really a viable and active community with business growing? I mean, I don't know how deep you want us to go.
I think, just on that little comment, on that question, I want us to do what the council needs. And they've asked us to be informed about the nature of the organization and the budgetary issues associated with the departments, to come back with your thoughtful consideration of those and to help them in the budgetary process. Sir?
Yeah, Howard Broadbeck. I would, just to answer your question that you asked, is how do we feel about taking a week off? I'm a little bit overwhelmed by all the material, and now that I know who some of the people are that I could go to ask questions, I think it would be a good idea to take a week off, and I don't think we should create any organizations until we all have a better idea where we think we might be going. And I think that would be better served to do that 2 weeks from now, or even consider it 2 weeks from now, rather than even thinking about it at this point.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I also feel the same way as Howard does also, and the reason why I feel that way is looking at the your suggested process with the 6 weekly 2 to 3 hour, that there's a presentation, a Q&A. I do not want to go and reinvent the wheel according to what some city staff and council members have already done and presented and evaluated. Now at this point, they're looking at, okay, how can these people help us look outside the box on this other issue? So they've already done a lot of the things, and so therefore I would like to wait, like Howard said, as well as you did, until after this process and information is given out to us. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Dick, Monica Stigler. I'd like to know if it's possible, if we're going to continue to meet in this room, to perhaps rearrange the tables to make it more conducive to conversation, dialogue, discussion. Right now, it's very difficult from this angle to see and hear people, not necessarily hear, but definitely to see people on the other side of the room.
Good point. Would you rather see a big old horseshoe kind of thing? Done. Okay. Okay. Very good. Good idea. Thank you. Is anybody opposed to that? Okay. Good. Sir?
Thought I unplugged the mic there for a second. Sorry. This is Bill Stipp. John, you mentioned that in the last budget year, the department heads went through a 5, 10, 20 reduction exercise?
10, 15, and 25.
10, 15, 25?
Yeah.
Did you use that material for the creation of the 9, 10 budget?
Much of it, yes.
To the 10% level or higher?
As I mentioned, some departments like community development, for example, suffered increases in the neighborhood of 30% because of the way they were structured. and the business that they were doing. Other departments like the police and fire were as low as 8%. So we picked and choose among them.
Sure. What I'm trying to get toward is, if we're talking about budget reduction, and as a citizen of the community, if you're going to tell me, or we're going to decide that we're going to reduce city services by 5%, just pick a number. I want to know what 5% means to the police department, what it means to the fire department, what it means to public works, etc. But being from that region, I know that that's going to be a lot of work. So is there anything that has already been done that we can get as information to use as a frame that isn't, I think we'd all have to have that with the understanding that these numbers aren't real, but at least what a 10% reduction at the police department would look like, and what that would mean to me as a citizen, or what.
We can certainly, Bill, take a look at the what shape that's all in and see what we can give to you or not.
Well, perhaps, John, just a thought that there would be a presentation from public safety. Each of the presentations that would be made to you would include that kind of information. So they won't simply be, here's what we do, and here's how we measure it. It would be some of the challenges and consequences. You could explore those key area by key area. And then the way they would be presented to you would, so that it would be digestible and understandable when you come to making your observations, would be by well-structured containers or divisions. So when the police or fire were talking with you, they would have that kind of information, be able to share it with you, while having you understand how they're interconnected with a whole variety of things.
And as a matter of fact, Dick, unless this changes, we are scheduled to bring police and fire at the next meeting.
Okay, so police and fire would be next.
Can we get detailed organizational charts to be presented to each one of us as they go through their information, showing what salaries are and whose assistants and how many secretaries are in the pool and this kind of thing?
To some degree, and yes, the answer is yes. Much of that, I think, is in some of the material that you have now, and if it's not, we'll certainly augment it with that kind of information.
Honestly, as much as I love the presentation that's in here, it's very small and it's condensed. It's not as detailed as having a full org chart.
All of those
showing it
are on the disc that we sent to you.
I know, but I have printed them off, and you should see the size of them. They're really small. They're they're not detailed. It doesn't show, like for you example, John, how many secretaries do you have? How are your support people? How many volunteers come in and work with you and help you? I don't know that. And on down the line to other department heads. I don't know. I mean, that is all included in the cost of running the business.
Well, let us look at that and see what we have. Yes, sir.
Gary Gelser. I don't think this committee's job is to look at the number of secretaries or management assistants that are working for the city and start eliminating. I think the job of this committee, is to make some broad recommendations on public services that the community both wants and needs and has to pay for. And that is why we have department heads and managers that we hired. We are not the operational people, nor is the city council. The city council sets the strategy for the community, and the city council has charged us with a specific task of looking at the budget from a strategic point of view, not a tactical point of view.
Thank you. Now, and I think that represents, we're going to have different viewpoints in here, and we will respect different viewpoints. And in the end, you'll see something surface that we can, again, put into a report that represents individual perspectives, but collected as a group. Yes, ma'am.
The survey that's going to be going out to the citizens to ask them what they think of city services and quality of living and in Goodyear, Will we have those questions available by the next meeting? I'd like to look at those questions and compare them with what was done in 2007.
Yes, you will. I saw Paula. Go ahead. Oh, okay. When will the data be available?
Well, you were initially asking about the questions, not the
I'd like to
responses.
see the questions so that I
Yes,
can
you will
begin to
see those.
compare.
And then we hope to have the raw data by the end of January, and we hope to be able to give you the report within the first 2 weeks of February. Yeah.
Great.
Do we have budget comparison to other cities? And if we have that information, where was that collected and how do we collect it?
We certainly have all that information. I'm just trying to think of how to present. We'll take a look at that and get that for you. So.
Sir.
Larry Price. If we're going to view presentations, can we get the slideshow prior to that evening? So,
Well, you know, can I answer? I'd like to say yes, but there are sometimes things to give you the best information that even at 2 o'clock in the afternoon today, people were double checking. And so I think that it's one thing to say yes, but then I might say to you, as I would tonight, a couple of the slides are different than what's in your book. So I think if we can certainly do that and get it on your page, but recognize that if we find things even toward the last minute that change, it might be a little bit different, Larry. Okay, thank you. Is that okay?
Certainly.
Marvin Fair. Not all of the suggestions that we develop may necessarily be involving cost cutting. If there are any suggestions for increasing revenue, who do we go to determine what our suggestion would possibly run in terms of numbers?
That would be done within this forum if you have an idea in advance, because a component of this is not just what would you cut, but how would you raise additional revenues, and that's certainly something that I would expect you could bring here. If you want to send it to me and have me ferret out some of those answers, I'm happy to do it, or you can discuss it within the group. When you are asked at the end of this process to do your ratings and make your observations, a substantial component of that will be narrative, and it will relate both to reductions and possible revenue generation. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to compliment the staff on the amount of material that was given to us in advance. When I looked at the amount of attachments that came with our notification of selection, it was tremendous. And as I went through all of those budget documents and matrix reports and so many things, that there was a wealth of information. I note that many of the questions this evening can relate to a lot of the data that was provided in advance. And I think the 2 weeks coming up are an excellent time period to review that data as well as what we received this evening.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Barry Hemp. I agree with Marvin. I think, and I want to ask a question about presentations on revenue generating ideas. I mean, we're going to hear about what departments look like, and we've talked a lot about reduction. But I think in terms of growth, I'd love to hear from the development people in terms of what they do have planned, how they plan to use the ballpark, things like that. So I think that's a good idea. And secondly, just a simple question: is it okay if we bring our computers? If you're going to share all that information with us electronically, may we bring them and use them?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And on the first point, departmental presentations may well include revenue enhancement possibilities that you can then add to a question and so on. How do you feel? What do you think? Do we want to schedule for 3 hours and hope you're finished earlier? Do we want to make darn sure we get out in 2 hours? Okay, let's do it that way. How many? We had 3. How many are comfortable that we schedule 3 and hope that we get done sooner? How many say get out of here in 2 hours? Well, you guys, you got the good news and the bad news. Well, how about this? That we're going to schedule for 3 and hope for 2. Is that fair? Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to throw on the table for the good of the order this evening? Sir.
Rain Gray. I'd like to propose a day change. I have a serious conflict with Wednesday. If
you know how hard that is to do?
Well, that's why I'm raising it. I realize it's a difficulty.
how many how many of you is Wednesday a particular problem? How many of you would be comfortable if we started a process right now of trying to change the day? So it's hard to, I'm sorry, I don't see any good way to do that. Yeah, unfortunately we don't broadcast live. But we could also talk about how to get you information, all the information that would happen here in the video or the audio. We should chat for a minute after. Do you know my nephew, Mark Gonzalez? On a video streaming. And so if we wanted to have one to... 2 days later, you mean after it's fixed?
So 2 days from now, this will be up.
And so conceivably, if someone wanted to have it for their own personal use, who's on the committee, that we could have a copy, probably a DVD or a CD.
Yeah, they can go right on our web page and access it.
Okay, set up, see if it works.
Joan Shield, I have one more question. Is it possible that we would have the opportunity to interview each one of the council and get their reasoning why they were behind raising or not raising taxes? Not as a group, not together, but individually, like one at a time?
Well, I think you have individual choices about who you speak with. I would suggest that the council's given a clear direction to the body, to you all. If you choose to have conversations with people on your own, that's quite your business. And as some of the council members suggested, if you talk to neighbors and gather thoughts and ideas from people, then that's a very powerful thing. So that would be up to you, and it's an individual choice.
But I was thinking they voted one way or the other for this, and it would be interesting to hear their reasoning, but why they were voting the way they were voting.
I think any individuals who choose to do that have the right to do that.
Okay.
Independent
so
of the rest of the body.
Committee. Okay.
Keeping in mind that this is about much more. This is about much more than a tax. This is about a very large set of issues and questions. Yes, sir.
Is there any limitation to contacting department heads, etc.?
Yes. I mean, here's a suggestion. These people are knocking themselves out under a very difficult financial situation, doing a heck of a job of it. I would like to have you contact me. I will guarantee you that I'll turn information around quickly, but I can be a clearinghouse that's both helpful to him and hopefully helpful to you. Because at this time of year, with budget and so many other things, and if it's something I simply can't answer, then we'll make that contact on your behalf. We will post them on the answers to questions, so that everybody sees the answers to all questions. Yes, sir. That's correct. And there'll be that page, and we'll get. I think you'll get something to Mario, so they'll know where to look for that, and it'll be very, very clear. Yes, sir.
Did this committee expire, or do you have any plans of going further with it?
The mayor mentioned in his comments that there's the possibility of that, but certainly for the current issue and the current expectation, the budget has its time limitations by which it has to be adopted. I think you said June 11th.
Yes, that's the date that the tentative budget has to be approved.
Yeah.
And the way Arizona works is the tentative budget basically is the budget.
No. I'm saying that all this has to be done, processed, folded into the process. So that's really March, and EOM March. I don't know about the sequel. That's, well, this is right. Oh, yes, please. Use your mics for your questions. That question, for the benefit of that, was, is there any, will this committee extend itself? And my response was that the current budget timing has a specific conclusion of this discussion. Whether the committee goes on is another issue altogether. So, folks, thank you very much for the evening. Please send any suggestions, observations, questions. We will turn those around very quickly. Thank you very much. Be well. See you in 2 weeks from tonight. Yes, please just, why don't you leave them there and we'll save them for you. Thank you very much. Thanks, folks. Good night.